hide these. Sweet. All right. So we'll start off first by doing a little bit of code reading. We'll take a quick look at our HTML file. Not too much is happening here, but we do have a script tag, which is loading in our compiled JavaScript. So we wrote our code in our TypeScript file, but because browsers can only understand JavaScript, we needed to make sure that we linked to our JavaScript file. So here is the contents of what our TypeScript file look like. So Rukaya, would you please read lines 1 and 3 and let me know if you would like a demo on either of them.
Okay. So the string Cody Miller is being assigned to the variable full name of type string.
Perfect.
And the Boolean value true is being assigned to the variable is cool of type Boolean.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Trey, could you please do lines 5 and 7 and let me know if you would like a demo on either of them.
All right, so the value, I'm sorry, I just had a brain freezer.
So I would say on line 5, the number 1000 is being assigned
to the variable total pets, and then the log element of the console object is being called with one argument with a string value of the full name, and then the variable full name.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
just a couple things we missed out on there. So first one here, we do want to make sure we also call out this type annotation. So the way of how I would read this is I would say on line 5, 1000 is being assigned to the variable total pets of type number. So just calling out what the actual type annotation there is at the end. And then for this one, you said the log element, we'll call it the log method. So I would say on line 7, the log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments, a string and the variable full name.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, good job. Thank you. Rukaya, back to you. Could you do lines 8 and 9?
The log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments. The string value of is cool and is cool. The variable is cool. Line 9, the log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments, the string value of total pets and the variable total pets.
Perfect. Thank you. Caroline, could you do 11 and 12, please?
On line 11, the log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments, a string and type of full name. And on line 12, the log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments, a string and type of is cool.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Trey, could you do line 13 and line 15, please?
So the log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments, the string type of total pets and the type of total pets. And then null is being assigned to the variable empty with the type of null.
Perfect. Yeah, awesome. I'll do these ones. So on line 17, the log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments, a string and the variable empty. And then on line 18, the log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments, a string and the type of empty variable. Rukaya, could you do 20 and 22, please?
So 20 would be nothing is the variable nothing is being defined with the type of undefined. Okay. And 22, the log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments, a string value of nothing and the variable nothing.
Perfect. Yep, nailed it. And then on line 23, the log method of the console object is being called with 2 arguments, a string, and the variable type of nothing. Let's go check out the quiz questions. So, Caroline, could you tell me what is the purpose of variables?
So variable is a type of container that stores value. And this container can be reused in our code.
Yep.
And it will still contain that same value we assigned to it.
Yep, exactly. So it's used to give me kind of like a container, some sort of a way to store data, store information, store data. And just like what you said, I can reuse it throughout my code. So that way, if I ever needed to reuse that data, then I can just use it by its name. But it gives me a way of kind of storing that data so that I can re-access it. Awesome. Trey, how can I declare a variable?
You declare a variable using var, let, or const, and you would use const when it's expected to stay the same or not change. You would use let when it's expected to change, and in other situations you would use var.
Yeah, exactly. So we would use some sort of a variable initializer. So we have 3 different ways of how we can create variables in JavaScript, TypeScript. We have const, we have let, and then we have var. Var was used in pre-ES6. So the way JavaScript gets updates is they have these things called ECMAScript versions or ECMA versions. The most common one is ES6, which was ES20, technically is ES2015, even though it's called ES6, I'm not really sure why. Essentially every year or however many years, there'll be a new ECMAScript version. I think now they actually started using the actual years. So I think now it's like ECMA 2024 or whatnot. But every year or whatnot, they'll add new additions to JavaScript. So pre-ES6, so before 2015 and earlier, the only way you could ever create variables was with the var keyword. So if you ever see snippets online, Stack Overflow, or just anywhere else, and it uses var, it's essentially just creating a variable. In ES6, they added 2 new keywords, let and const. And moving forward, those are going to be the 2 keywords we're always going to want to use. So anytime we want a variable to stay the same and its value will never change, we'll use const. And if we do want a variable's value to change at some point, then we'll use let. So in this case right here, I have const full name equals Cody Miller. If I then tried to go and do full name equals Sean Cost, well, now you can see I'm getting an error. And then it says cannot assign to full name because it is a constant. Because I used that const keyword, so it's expecting full name's value to always stay the same. If I, decided, oh, I actually want to be able to reassign this variable, well, now I could go and I could change it to a let, and it would be completely fine. So let will allow me to reassign our variables. So const, if you ever want a variable's value to always stay the same. Let, if you ever plan on reassigning a variable. And then var, I would not use at all anymore. I would just, you may see it online, but I would never use var. I would always use either const or let. I usually default to const. I use const for everything until I get an error like this. And then as soon as I get an error, then I'll go back and then I'll change the const to a let. But by default, I would get in the habit of always starting with const and then changing to a let if you need it. Any questions about that? All right. Then Rukaya, how do you initialize or assign a value to a variable?
With the help of the assignment operator, that is the equal to symbol.
Yeah, so with the assignment operator, which in JavaScript is just going to be that equal sign. So we can utilize that assignment operator or that equal sign to assign a value to a variable. So on line 3, I'm assigning the true variable or value to the variable is cool because of that equal sign. Caroline, what characters are allowed in variable names?
Letters, numbers, underscores, and $sign.
Yeah, exactly. So letters, numbers, $signs, and underscore. So a variable name, it can start with a letter, it can start with an underscore, it can start with a $sign. It can contain numbers. So if I put 9 here, totally fine. I could add more and more. The only thing with numbers, a variable cannot start with a number. So you can see as soon as I put the number at the front, the syntax highlighting changes, and now it's like 9 is cool. It's not valid. So a variable can have a number somewhere in the name, but it cannot start with a number. So it can start with a letter, it can start with a $sign, it can start with an underscore, it can contain a number, it just can't have that number at the beginning. Any questions about that? Okay. And then Trey, what does it mean to say that variable names are case sensitive?
Case sensitive means capitalization matters. You can have the same name used for two different variables. In that one has a different capitalization.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly, capitalization matters. So even if I had two variables that were named the same, but a different capitalization, so something even like this, two completely different variables. Just because this A is capitalized and this A is lowercase, this is a whole completely different variable. So capitalization matters. So each individual capitalization of each character is accounting for that. So in this case, this would be two different variables. What the convention we're going to follow is camel case. So that means that the first word of our variable is always going to be lowercase, and then every word following it will be uppercase. So camel case, if I wanted to keep adding, the start of every new word will be capitalized. There's lots of other cases. I think there's snake case. I think, is that the underscore one? There's a Pascal case. I forget the difference. There's lower camel case. There's upper camel case. So there's a whole lot of different ways. JavaScript, the best practice / convention is just going to be using this camel case. So starting with lower character, and then each word after the first character will be capitalized. On the senior side in React, you're going to see that some function names are going to be capitalized. We only capitalize things in JavaScript in React when they're referred to as a component. So we won't talk about that for about 7 or 8 more weeks or whatnot. But as soon as you get to the senior side, you're going to be learning about React, and you're going to be learning about things called component, and that's where things are capitalized for. If we're not working in React, then all of our variables will be lowercase with that camel case. Any questions about that? Okay, then Rukaya, what is the purpose of a string?
The purpose of a string is to represent text.
Yeah, exactly. Just to represent text. If I ever needed to store text, I needed to work with text, I needed to show text. That's just the purpose of a string, is it just allows me to store some sort of a data in a text format. Caroline, what about numbers? What are the purpose of numbers?
The number is, we can use either integer or floating numbers, and the purpose of that is to do mathematical operations of some sort.
Yeah, so anytime we ever need to do any sort of mathematical operations, I need to add stuff, subtract, find the average, divide or whatnot, we can use numbers to help us out with those. Trey, what about Booleans? What is the purpose of a Boolean?
The Boolean is used for conditional testing, where you would need to decide on the path of code to execute based on the truthiness of a condition.
Yeah, exactly. So Booleans help us to make decisions in our code. So in a couple days, we'll cover conditional statements. So we'll cover those if-else statements and other types of conditional statements. So Booleans are really beneficial because they allow us to make decisions. Do I want this code to run, or do I want this code to run? So the way that I think about Booleans is I think about like a light switch. Do I want the lights to be on, or do I want the lights to be off? I just kind of flip it one way, and the other action occurs. So we can kind of do that same flow, but in our code. You know, So if we think about like a movie theater, movie theater can sell 3 different types of tickets, right? They have like children tickets, they have adult tickets, and they have elderly tickets. So based off of 3 different conditions, we can have 3 different things. So is Sean a child? False. I'm not a child, well, ideally not, so that way they know that they shouldn't charge me a child's ticket or whatnot. So it just helps us to make decisions in our code. Awesome. Thank you, Trey. Rukaya, what does the equal operator mean in JavaScript?
It is the assignment operator. It is used to assign values to the variables.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the assignment operator. So we'll use it whenever we want to assign a value to some sort of a variable. Caroline, how can I update the value of a variable?
By using the equal sign, the assignment operator.
Yeah, exactly. So just by using the assignment operator or the equal sign again. So in this case, I have a variable called nothing. I want to reassign it. So now I can just put the variable name. So what am I wanting to reassign and what am I wanting to assign to it? I now want to assign a string or whatnot. So now I am reassigning the nothing variable to now have this value. Yeah.
And then we can reuse that variable with the new value because of the hierarchy, right? We can reuse it later on with the new value.
So now right here, now my console logs 25 and 26
It's
gonna be something because they now came after this line of code. If I had moved this so that it ran right here, well then now at this point it would have no value. At this point it would have this value right here. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I think, yeah.
Why would we need to reassign a value to something, for example?
Because stuff changes. So like let's think about today. We were supposed to have another student in our class, Alexander, right? Alexander is no longer going to be a part of the class. So let's say I had created a variable for Alexander, and now Alexander's not here anymore. Well, I need to remove him, right? So I need to reassign something. So maybe I had like a students array with all of you in, but now I need to remove Alexander. I would now need to reassign or whatnot. So things can change. Think about like forms. Sometimes you fill out a form, not every field is optional, right? Sometimes it has you include your name, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the marked in is optional. And maybe it lets you edit that information. So maybe they had saved your original object. Now you go into the settings and now you update your email address. Well, now they need to reassign your email address because you just updated it.
Okay.
So, sometimes the users edit things in the application and now you need to save those edits.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We just answered that one. So I think it is Trey. Trey, what is the difference between null and undefined?
I said undefined is used to check if a variable has not been initialized, while null is explicitly used to set a variable with no current value.
Exactly. So null is intentionally used by the developer. So it's usually used as like a placeholder. Like I want to create this variable, but I don't have the data to give it something yet. So I'll just give it null. So it's created, it exists, and I just kind of give it a default kind of starting value. Undefined is usually the absence of a value. So it's usually as a result of like, an error or something or a bug in my code. It means it doesn't exist. Null means it does exist purposefully, it just doesn't have a value associated with it. So null is kind of an intentional placeholder. Undefined is the absence of a value. So if I try to log something, so like if I open up my console right here, right? And if I try to log a full name variable, you see full name is not defined, it's undefined. It has no value, there's an absence to it. Now, if I created it and then I put null, and now if I log full name, you can see its value is just null. It's not undefined, it was defined. I created the variable. It just kind of has an intentional placeholder as its value. So null, whenever you kind of just want to give something a starting value, but you'll probably change it at some point. Undefined is usually you're working with something that doesn't exist. Rukaya, why is it a good habit to include labels when we log values to the console?
So labels would help us identify if we're logging multiple values to the console. So say if you're logging full name and your name and my name. So if there were labels, it would be easier for us to identify whose name is being logged.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're ever logging like lots of data and to make sure that you're looking at the correct data and like what comes what, then including labels is really helpful. Just like the example we kind of gave, if I wanted to log both of our names and maybe I forgot which variable I was logging, including just a little label up front just allows me to easily see that. So now if we open up our HTML file and if we look at our console, I see, oh, what am I logging? I'm logging the full name variable. Oh, what am I logging? I'm logging the isCool variable. If we were to remove some of these, I'm just going to remove them from the JavaScript, so I don't have to worry about compiling them real quick. So let me just delete some of these. Okay, save, saved. Cody Miller, true, 1000 string. Okay, cool. Like I see the data, but like, why did I log this? Like, why am I getting Cody Miller back? Like, what was I logging? Now I would probably need to go to the actual line number, see where I did the log. So labels just kind of help me to give me additional information. So very, very useful when I'm doing like some deep debugging and I'm like trying to understand why certain things are running or what the actual data type something is. So it just really helps me keep track of what it is that I'm logging. So that way I don't have to keep kind of jumping back and forth between my code to the browser to actually see what it is that I was trying to log. Awesome. And then Caroline, can you give me 5 examples of JavaScript primitives?
Strings, numbers, booleans. Bin it.
I mean, those will all be considered numbers.
Okay, let's see. I just wrote it down like this.
There's 2 that are kind of similar, but not. We talked about the difference between them.
Oh, the undefined and null.
And null, yeah, exactly. So the 5 primitives, we have numbers, we have strings, we have booleans, we have null, and we have undefined. So those are going to be our 5 primitives that we'll work with in JavaScript. Strings, numbers, booleans, null, undefined. Those are our 5 primitives. Awesome. I kind of talked about all the main things I kind of wanted to talk about, the different type of casing and whatnot, the const versus let. Did anyone else have any initial questions about the primitives and variables exercise? All right, then we shall move on. So I'll drop in the next exercise then. So this one, it'll probably see maybe a little bit into let me make sure I'm assigning the right one. Homework. So it's 4:20, so we have about 40 minutes left of class. So we'll just finish off with some more work time. So we'll start working on this exercise, but we'll probably do the Q&A on this in the morning, just because I don't really like to rush Q&As at the end. I want to make sure we take our time and answer any questions or whatnot. So we'll finish off with just some work time. So we'll start working on this, but we'll have the Q&A first thing tomorrow morning. So tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we'll start off the day by doing a Q&A on this one. So Caroline, if you wanted to leave and do this one at home and beat the traffic, you're more than welcome to go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then that would be that. But any let me, I guess, just go over some of the starting points. So for this one, you're going to be learning about some new operators and expressions. So you'll be learning about how to concatenate strings, how we can use the plus operator to add numbers, add strings. You'll be learning about some comparison operators, so how we can compare values. We'll do a breakdown of the different types of operators. So our arithmetic, our strings, our assignments, equality, and some additional ones. And then we'll have our actual exercise steps. Again, keep an eye out for that CD to make sure you're kind of CDing in to compile and then CDing out when you go to commit. We also have this TypeScript Jumpstart guide. So if you need a refresher on all the types and how you can correctly annotate all your types, you can feel free to use that guide to help you out. For this one, you may need to do a little bit of your own kind of thinking to think about what the data type something is. So something like this, it says declare two variables named width and height and assign them each a number value. So that means I'm going to have one variable called width, one variable called height, and they're both going to be numbers, right? Now it says multiply width and height and assign the result to a new variable named area. So now I would do width times height and then, area equals width times height. Now it doesn't tell me what the type is for area. However, if I'm multiplying width and height and they're both numbers, what would probably be the type of my area variable?
Number.
A number, yeah. So I may not explicitly tell you what the type is. You may just need to do a little bit of your kind of best judgment based off of what you're working with, but just kind of keep an eye out for that. And then that will be that. And then here will be the actual exercise completion. So once you finish off, your console log should look something a little bit like this. And then another code reading example. Any questions or anything before we get started? Trey, what's up?
I don't think we're using it yet, but just have a real quick question for a date. Would that be considered a number or a string?
Oh, like when you actually create like a date in JavaScript?
Correct.
Yeah, this would be considered a string. So when you create a date, it'll give you back. There's multiple ways of how you can format it, but it'll give you a date in like a string format. And then there'll be additional methods of how you can customize it. Like if you want it in like the European form where like it goes like the dates first and then months or whatnot. So there's ways of how you can format it, but all dates would technically be strings.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other initial questions? All right, well, I'll stop our share. That'll be it for now. We won't have any other Q&As or anything. So I'll probably just close up the Zoom call. I'll still be around to answer any questions or whatnot as you guys work through it. So I'll be here around until about 5. So if you have any questions when you start working through it, reach out to me on Slack. And then I'll see both of our, I guess all 3 of you, but remote people. I'll see both of you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I'll send out a new Zoom link around 8:55 every morning. So just keep an eye out for the Zoom link I'll send out in the channel. And then I'll see you all tomorrow morning for next Q&A. So see ya. It was a good first day and I'll see you all tomorrow.